I want to assure this committee and the American public that the Postal Service is fully capable and committed to delivering the nation's election mail securely and on time.
We saw a combination of malfeasance, but also incompetence. And if we don't solve both of those problems, we are going to have a national breakdown of our elections come November.
We shouldn't have to risk our lives to cast our votes. We need to be able to do what President Trump does, vote safely by mail.
It's projected that more Americans than ever will be casting their votes in the 2020 election. But with uncertainty around mail-in voting and concerns around voting in person, many are left wondering, will election officials be able to meet the demand? Even before the pandemic, 2020 had the potential to set voter turnout records. In 2018, we had the highest midterm turnout rate since 1914. After the pandemic hit, many voters are motivated by healthcare, the economy, and social justice. Political protests have grown around the country, bringing people to the streets and to the polls.
Black Lives Matter! We're going to see some changes this year that we would not have seen if people were not in the streets. And you should absolutely do both if you can. Get in the streets, come to the polling places.
People are determined to say, this has got to change. They're determined to raise their voices. Young people particularly, we need to be engaged.
I've studied elections in the United States for the past 30 years or so. We may see a turnout rate, I don't know, maybe 150 million people vote. It would not be unreasonable to think that maybe 50% of the votes are being cast by mail. That's a big change in the election.
I feel for people that have to put a lot of time and energy into going to the polls. I think this is the way of the future, and it's the way that everyone should be voting.
So who can vote by mail in America in 2020? 9 states and Washington, D.C. will automatically send ballots to registered voters. 36 states can vote by mail because of the coronavirus or without citing a reason. And 5 states will still require a reason beyond the virus to vote by mail. The terms mail-in and absentee are often used interchangeably. Specifically, President Trump has been critical of universal mail-in voting, where states automatically send ballots to registered voters.
Absentee ballots are great. They work, they've been proven, they're good like in Florida. But this universal mail-in is a very dangerous thing. It's fraught with fraud and every other thing that can happen. And we have to be very, very careful. We have a very big election coming up.
But analysis by the Washington Post of fraud in vote-by-mail states found that only 0.0025%, or 1 out of every 40,000 ballots, in the 2016 and 2018 general elections were fraudulent.
There's basically a speeding gun on every corner, on every ballot, looking at every voter that would be a person casting a ballot. Election officials have signature verification to ensure that the voter is who they say they are. The ballots themselves have tracking codes on them. Each ballot is tailored to each precinct in the country. So the format of the ballots are different across the country. The paper that's printed, the envelopes, they're different, and they have different coloring and different wording, and there's barcoding on them, and then there's a signature verification. So, something along those lines that seems very, near impossible. The irony of the demographics of vote by mail is that traditionally it's really been Republicans who have voted by mail. But since the pandemic has hit, and since we've had all this rhetoric coming from Donald Trump about how mail balloting is ripe with fraud and other things, Republican voters are listening to Donald Trump, and they are not requesting their mail ballots. But the Democrats are requesting their mail ballots.
Even as voting by mail grows in popularity, during the pandemic, 59% of people would still prefer to vote in person.
If you'd have told me 5 years ago that I needed to order plexiglass shields and plastic face masks, I probably would have laughed, but not anymore.
I would like to see as much in-person voting as possible. If you have to vote by absentee ballot, you have to, but it should be strictly regulated and only in certain cases.
But the average age of poll workers in America has been over 60, and many polling locations can't risk exposure. Staffing polls has required creativity from election officials and the public, including the NBA.
It is crucial that all of our arenas throughout the country join the Barclay, join Madison Square Garden, and join other venues to say we will open our doors and ensure that people will be allowed to vote.
But not everybody lives near a stadium. On top of that, we have fewer volunteers to be poll workers.
Initially, what we heard from a lot of election experts was that there was starting to emerge across the country this acute need, even though vote by mail was getting so much attention, for poll workers to staff in-person voting locations. In Cuyahoga County, in Ohio, Greater Cleveland, they currently have 1,500, and for their county alone, they need 4,500. Philadelphia is similar, has about a 6,000 poll worker deficit, and so we're seeing this all across the country.
The good news, I would say, is that since we're seeing so many people vote by mail and vote in person early, that's a release valve. The election officials are going to try and make it as safe as possible. They've got their personal protective equipment. And instead of getting that I voted sticker you might normally get, maybe you're going to get a memento pen. So election officials are trying to be as creative as they possibly can to keep people safe as they're voting in person.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.